Hello everyone, my name is Keely. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before, and welcome to everything I read in the month of March. Dare I say it, I am getting my reading mojo back little by little because I managed to read 11 books in March with an average rating of 3.36, which honestly isn't bad. At this point, I will take any kind of reading. So as always, I'm going to talk about these books in the order that I read them in. The first book I read was Adrift in Currents, Clean and Clear by Shauna Maguire. This is book 10 in the Wayward Children series, and in this one, we follow a little girl named Nadia who grew up in a Russian orphanage. When one day a couple from America comes to adopt her, and Nadia has never felt like she needed to be adopted. She enjoyed being at the orphanage and taking care of the other children. And one thing about Nadia is she only has one arm, and so people have always seen her as broken. Now, this American couple takes her over to America, they start raising her, but they really aren't the greatest parents because they only adopted the kid for how people will perceive them, because it is the right thing to do, it is the good thing to do, and so they are making it their mission to fix Nadia, even though she has never wanted another arm because she's never known that, so why would she want it? So in Nadia's book, the world we visit for her is the drowned world, and there's lots of turtles, it's underwater, there's some sea explorations, and I really enjoyed Nadia's world so much. I also really loved Nadia as a character and the disability representation we saw through her and how she was telling people, I'm not broken just because I'm different than you. This was definitely a solid book in this series, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. The next book I read was The Book Eaters by Sunyi Dean, and in this world we follow a group of people who eat books to survive when one woman has a son and he eats human minds to survive. Now clearly this is an issue, and people in his world, in their government, think, hey, we need to kill this boy before he becomes dangerous, so she has to take her son on the run. This book had just enough fantasy elements in it for me to not be lost and confused. If you don't know, I don't love fantasy, but I love fantasy set in real world settings, and this did it absolutely perfectly. I really loved the mother, the main character in this book, and it was really interesting how we got to see the world that she lived in and the people that basically controlled her. Women don't have a lot of rights in their society, and they often are made to get married and to have children, but not to become mothers to those children. They are not allowed to be mothers, and so when this main character really wants to be a mother, obviously trouble ensues. I loved the adventures we went on. It felt very high stakes and like we were on the run, and I loved the element of having to eat books to survive. And the coolest thing is when they ate those books, they gained all the knowledge from the reading, the books, the words, and that is such a cool way to gain knowledge. So these people were so smart, they spoke different languages, they knew all about the world, but yet they were so confined to their own society. I really enjoyed this book. I love how dark it got. However, it wasn't a perfect book for me. I felt like the beginning was more interesting to me a little bit, but I loved this one nonetheless, and I gave it 4 stars. Next, I read Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke, and this is a horror novella all about this man who everyone sees him as the perfect father. Him and his son have a beautiful relationship. The only problem is this man does not have a son. So this is kind of a creepy child story, and I really did enjoy that. I thought the creepy child aspect was really well done, but it was a little short for me, and the end did lose me a little bit. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars, but I am very interested in reading more from this author. Next, I read Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke and Other Misfortunes by Eric LaRocca, and this is another novella collection, horror stories, and it is made up of 3 different stories. The first one is Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, which is one of his most famous stories, and I absolutely love that story so much. It is one of my favorite things I've ever read. It's about 2 women who become obsessed with each other through the cell of an apple peeler, and it's a tale about obsession, and that was my favorite story in the collection. The other 2 were pretty good. They weren't my favorite, and I felt like one of them, I can't remember which one, I didn't love as much as the other ones. Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, if that stood alone, I gave it 5 stars, but overall as a whole collection, I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Next, I read Below by Laurel Hightower. This is another horror novella, and this is a Mothman story, and I really did not enjoy this one. I honestly don't even remember my feelings about it. I just thought it was boring. There wasn't a lot going on to me, and I was not interested in the resolution at all whatsoever. did not care about the characters or what happened to them, and the ending I do remember actually made me very angry, so I actually gave this one 1 star. Next, I read The Night Swim by Megan Golden, and in this one we follow a woman who runs a very famous podcast, and she travels to this town because a very big trial is about to happen. Now, this trial is very similar to the Brock Turner case, where we had this Olympic golden boy who allegedly assaulted a girl. Now, that was really difficult to read, but on the other side of things, when she gets to this town, she keeps getting these mysterious letters from a woman saying that her sister was murdered 25 years ago. So as this trial is progressing, the podcaster is also really interested in this old murder, and she's trying to follow along with both cases. Now, like I said, the trial is really difficult to read, and I wasn't sure why the author went that way, but I realized this happens every day to people, and obviously this happened to Chanel Miller, and it is a big thing that we see all the time, and we see how people are treated throughout it. So that one was interesting. However, I definitely enjoyed the other case better, the murder from 25 years ago, and the story did feel very high stakes because as we were following these 2 cases, things were also currently happening in the present that were life or death. This one was really fast paced for me. This is kind of when in the month I started feeling my reading mojo coming back. Again, it wasn't a perfect book for me, but I did give it 4 stars. It was so close to 5, and I really enjoyed it. Next, I read It's One of Us by J.T. Ellison, and in this one we follow a couple who are really struggling with getting pregnant. When one day the police come knocking at their door and they said, hey, a woman was murdered and we have a DNA match. And they're like, there's no way, it's my husband, he didn't do it. And they were like, no, the DNA match is your son. So imagine their surprise when they're struggling to get pregnant and the husband has a son. Now, this one was definitely a lot more intriguing towards the beginning, but I felt like towards the end it started feeling a little too long, and I felt like we should have wrapped it up sooner. I definitely was intrigued throughout the whole thing, don't get me wrong. I was just feeling like it was a little long at the end, if that makes sense. Now, this book is very domestic, so if domestic thrillers are not your thing, then this probably won't be for you. I actually enjoyed that part, but at the end of the day, again, didn't really care about any of the characters. I thought they were kind of all horrible, and I didn't love the direction this went in, so I did give it 3 stars. Now, the next book I read, Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Obviously, if you have not heard, this is Haymitch's story, but it is so much more than that. I do have an entire vlog about this book particularly, so please go watch it because that is one of my favorite videos I've ever done. But this book absolutely destroyed me, broke my heart in every way conceivable. I didn't even imagine the direction she would go in. I didn't even imagine how much hurt I could feel from this book. I think about it every single day, I'm not kidding. It is so good. Suzanne Collins is an absolute genius. She is a mastermind. She is a master at her craft, and I absolutely love this book. I gave it 5 stars. Obviously, I couldn't imagine giving it anything less. Next, I read Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Seabright, and this is an extreme horror novel about 2 serial killers who end up meeting up and killing together. Now, this one is also kind of historical. It's set in like the 80s or 90s during when HIV and AIDS really rose and people were very terrified of it. So this one was interesting reading in a setting like that, and one of the men actually has AIDS, and so he's able to get away with a lot. Obviously he's a serial killer because people are afraid of him, not just because he's a serial killer, but because he has AIDS. This one was interesting. I do prefer some POVs in this book over others. We saw a lot of characters, a lot of POVs, and some of them I was kind of bored with. There was also one serial killer I was more interested in compared to the other. I feel kind of mediocre about this book, honestly. I did like how gory and gruesome it got. I love goriness and gruesomeness, are those words. So I did enjoy that. It was interesting to see that in a traditionally published novel as well, but overall I just feel kind of about it, so I did give it 3 stars. Next, I read Haunted Ever After by Jen DeLuca, and we are set in Boneyard Key in Florida, which is a very haunted town. And in this one, we follow a woman who picks up, buys a house, and moves there randomly because she feels very behind in life. All of her friends are getting married and having babies, and so she feels like she has to do something for herself. Relatable. So she gets to Boneyard Key, and she meets this really grumpy cafe owner, and he's kind of really standoffish to her at first because he thinks she's a tourist, and then he finds out she lives there. And this story is all about the house she lives in that is actually haunted and how they are going to communicate with the ghosts there. I will say, one of my absolute favorite things in the story is the town. The town is so cool. I loved all the ghost aspects. I loved getting to meet the different ghosts and hearing about all the haunted places. Now, my least favorite part about this book was the romance. I did not care about the romance between these two people. I honestly wish it was more platonic and they just stayed friends, because when we did get to the spicy scene, it felt so far out of left field, so unexpected, and just kind of like it was thrown in there because this is supposed to be romance. But I did not care about these two characters in a relationship at all, and in fact when I got to those scenes I felt pretty bored because I just didn't want them together. So I did give this one 3 stars. And the last book I read in the month of March was The Housemaid's Secret by Frida McFadden. This is book 2 in the series, and of course we follow Millie, the housekeeper, who goes around and she helps save women from abusive relationships by getting rid of the men. And this one was kind of the same as the first one. I will say I really disliked a lot of the characters, so I wasn't as intrigued as the first one. I definitely enjoyed that one more. However, if you liked the first book, you will most likely like the second book as well. But it was okay for me. I still want to continue and read all of her books, but I did give this one 3 stars. So those are all the books that I read in the month of March. Please let me know your favorite book you read and why it was Sunrise on the Reaping. But that is it for this video. If you have made it this far, go ahead and leave the snake emoji for Sunrise on the Reaping. But that is it. As always, all my social media links will be down below, and I will see you next time. Bye!